The working world is open like never before, collaborating constantly across countless platforms at the intersection of communications, people, and data. The solution? Work Protected. Work Protected enables you with a security solution that connects all the dots. One partner, integrated, intelligent, and intuitive. Mimecast. Work Protected with intelligent email and collaboration security only from Mimecast. Visit securityweekly.com/Mimecast to learn more.
It's time to rethink how we approach cybersecurity because the reality is modern cyber attackers are already past your initial defenses. ExtraHop helps your security team find and eradicate advanced threats before real damage is done. Protect your enterprise and customers with better defense. Learn more about how ExtraHop stops advanced threats at securityweekly.com/ExtraHop. That's extra HOP.
Managing and protecting the world's grueling number of endpoints, enabling Tanium's customers to see, control, and protect every endpoint everywhere. Tanium's mission is to provide certainty in uncertain times with the industry's only converged endpoint management, trusted by the U.S. military and the majority of the Fortune 100. Today, Tanium helps manage and protect nearly 30 million endpoints. Tanium, the power of certainty. Visit securityweekly.com/Tanium to learn more. How is your business staying one step ahead of cyber criminals? Secure your email, applications, network, and data with Barracuda. Protect your business and go from zero to security in no time flat. Whether your team is working in one location or many, Barracuda has solutions that are easy to buy, deploy, and use. Learn how Barracuda can protect your business against ransomware, phishing, and other cyber attacks. Visit securityweekly.com/Barracuda. That's securityweekly.com/Barracuda. Barracuda, your journey secured.
Welcome back to Business Security Weekly. I am your host, Matt Alderman, joined by Jason Albuquerque and Tyler Robinson. Security Weekly listeners, we need to hear your voices. Leave us your feedback on Apple Podcasts and submit a screenshot to our giveaway form for a chance to win a $100 gift card from Hacker Warehouse. This giveaway will be open until the end of the year. We appreciate your honest feedback so we can continue to make great content for our audience. Visit securityweekly.com/giveaway to enter. All right, articles of the week. So I brought this first one for you, Jason. The top 5 qualities you need to become a next-gen CISO.
Next gen. Ooh, I love it. Next gen CISO. Wow. Woo. Man. You know, how about we change the title of this to become an effective CISO, to become an effective leader? I mean, I think number one, it translates no matter what, because, you know, to be a good CISO, you need to be a good leader, right?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, these are things we've talked about over and over again on the show. You need to understand the business. You need to speak the language of the business. You need to let your leadership skills shine through. You know, that's, building relationships. That's being a little bit of an evangelist, right? That's connecting with the organization. Balance opportunity with risk. Of course, we can't be seen as a roadblock, right? There's no way. We need to be enabling the business and helping the business drive forward, and, be able to have that conversation around risk management and work with leaders to say, and I love this phrase, with an executive that I worked with before always said, is the squeeze worth the juice? You have to sit back and really evaluate risk and risk tolerance and see if the business wants to accept certain risk to move forward. And then you have to be strategic. I mean, those are the top 5. We talk about this all the time. This isn't anything new. It's not next gen CISO. Matt, I've been on this show for 4 years. We've been talking about all 4 of them.
Yes, and that's why, look, these are great leadership qualities in general. Whether you're a CISO, a CEO, it doesn't really matter. These are the things that great leaders have. It's just this concept of next gen CISO, right? We've had transformational CISOs for almost a decade, maybe even longer when you look at some of them in the industry, right? They've already been carving their own kind of paths through the CISO ranks. And, they call it the next gen CISO. It's like, no, to be a CISO, to be a leader, to be a business leader, these are the top 5 qualities you have. And I think that's the most important takeaway from this article.
Yeah,
I think
100%.
you'll see a gap start to eventually show with kind of the next evolution of a lot of the startups and the VCs where they're tightening down. You've got this not scale at all cost kind of mentality. You'll start to see the CISOs that were doing some of the things wrong, that were spending budget, having a lot of shelfware, not paying attention, being as strategic. I think some of that's going to start to stand out from both the good and the bad side of CISOs. You'll see the strategic side of many companies start to mature much quicker, and I believe you'll start to see those that are not make some adjustments in their personnel.
Yeah, just like we'll see the weeding out of good companies and bad companies and how they manage themselves, we'll probably see the same thing with certain leaders too, for sure. Article number 2, clearing the fog, identifying blind spots in cybersecurity budgets. This was, I wasn't surprised by this one. This one leans into a little bit what we're going to do next week when we're in studio, Jason, which is really start to tackle some of these issues around what is minimum viable security? Like, where are the gaps? What are the things that we have to do? This article touches on some of them. I don't think it's not going to go to the depth that I want to spend some time in studio next week with you getting ready for the show. But some of these are like, we know there's gaps here, right? And what I think this article is trying to do is really to help guide CISOs on as you're going through the budgeting process, because everything I've heard is budgets are flat next year. Then some people might have frozen budgets. Most people, what I'm hearing is they're going to be flat, right? So how do I move dollars around where I have gaps to get to a net zero budget gain, but also cover the areas that I need to cover? And, you know, some of these tips might help in the short term. I think our session will do a better job of it in a couple of weeks.
I 100% agree that it will. And in times like this, it's a zero-based budgeting exercise, right? Yeah. You sit back and you reevaluate the entirety of your budget, and you figure out where the most strategic places you can maximize your spend are. And in many instances, it may be, and this is the say easy, do hard, know your organization, know your assets, know your risk, have them classified, have them prioritized, right? This is that say easy, do hard. Once you have that, you can start investing in the right place. One thing I didn't see here is technical debt, right? I didn't see that as a line item in here that, you know, as a CISO, you can help the IT organization maybe invest in, you know, getting that technical debt up to speed, right? Where if you can bring that level of risk to the table, you know, you can start helping influence maybe some of that spend. You know, a lot of times I tell the story of, you know, an international organization that had trouble getting funding from the CFO for an antiquated PBX. Well, you know what they did? They invested, you know, $25,000, $30,000, had a risk assessment done. That risk assessment was handed to the CFO, and now they have the money available, right? Because that risk assessment articulated the risk to the business, right? And what that investment would help do. So, you know, you got to understand the technical debt. And as a CISO, maybe you can help alleviate that if you can tell the right story and bring the right information to the table.
Right. And it's telling the right story, right? It's identifying those gaps, telling that story, and justifying those expenses, right? Technical debt is a fun one these days, right? Because we don't think about it at the top of our list, but it is something that can come back and bite you later. And that if you don't address it when you have the opportunity to address it, it only gets bigger. And eventually it will bite you in the butt.
Right. And I always call it that deferred maintenance. Government is so, they've been so inflicted with deferred maintenance. And you see it all the time with government buildings and school buildings where, you know what, we'll take care of the roof next year. You know what, we'll take care of the roof next year. 20 years goes by. And instead of spending that money year over year, or maybe every few years to maintain and upkeep it, now you're looking down the barrel of a $12 million investment to fix that roof or fix that mechanical issue or fix that HVAC system. It's that deferred maintenance that they keep punting and punting and punting. It ends up costing more in the end.
Yeah, and then here's what it does, right? It has to be a bond issue that comes on to the election circuit right in the middle of a recession that's hard to get funded because everybody's tightening their belts, right? Like it eventually catches up with you, and it could hurt. Right. Yeah.
Yep.
For sure. This next article, I mean, we've talked about pieces of this, but Here you've got investors.com talking about how Microsoft is changing the cybersecurity market. We all internally, instinctively kind of know this, right? We've been watching what's been happening with Microsoft. But when something comes up in investor.com, this is hitting a whole different level of audience that probably didn't realize what Microsoft has been doing. And this ties a little bit into your budgeting, my budgeting article from the previous one. When you're looking for leverage and opportunities to get to net zero, this is one of those areas, right? Is based on where you're spending money. Can I spend less, get basically the same capabilities from a single vendor? Not only am I getting vendor consolidation, I'm probably offsetting some budgets I need to open up some other investment, and I'm getting probably just as good a solution than I had before. And so this article is really interesting because it's on the investment side of the house, which is not typically the audience we cater to, but there's something here. They said if they broke out Microsoft's security business, it's something like a $15 billion company, which is bigger than all the other cyber companies out there.
That's it. I mean, they have been a sleeper for a little while building this ecosystem. And we've talked about the ecosystem approach for years now, right, Matt?
Yep.
Been a sleeper. And I mean, they've focused on identity and access management, their SIM and XDR, their cloud security, their risk management and privacy platform, right? Bringing it all together into that ecosystem. And we just talked about it from the last article. If you're going through a zero-based budgeting exercise, you're going to look at where you can consolidate, gain economies of scale, and save some dollars so you can maximize that spend later, right? Invest in the right places. And we all know that going to that magic quadrant and going out and buying 60 of the best hasn't worked. It hasn't, right? So it's this ecosystem approach. It's playing right into what we've been talking about for years now. And they're doing a great job, to be honest with you, right? And they're creating that ecosystem that folks can go in with existing licenses that they're paying for. Most organizations have an E3 or an E5 right now.
Yeah.
So in your zero-based budgeting exercise, this is something that's going to be ringing true, where they're going to have to really make a decision on use what I have and what I'm already paying for, be able to gain economies of scale and consolidation, shift off some of that expenditure, and now be able to take that money and spend it in the right place.
Yeah.
Yeah. Microsoft's really pushed to get to this point. Like, they've been playing chess for a long time, and they're kind of at the end of the board game where your Azure AD, your O365, all unbranded underneath of that, Microsoft O365 for identity, for management, all of those pieces have now come playing into that. And they're at a point where they are in the best of the best quadrant from an EDR standpoint, from a visibility, from a cloud management standpoint, all those pieces where they're getting all that telemetry because they've had such a huge market share. They're going to discount that because they want that reoccurring subscription, and they have been.
Right.
And that really lends them to a position in the market that, as one of the other big vendors, like, I would be pretty terrified of what they're offering and how they're offering it at the price that they are.
100%. And do you want to know what? They've opened up. They've opened up to say, we're going to integrate with anybody and everybody, right? I mean, they have Defender for Cloud. They have, their attack surface management. They can go in and do, with Microsoft Defender for Cloud, you can do security posture management against AWS, GCP, all of your cloud vendors, So they're saying, you want to know what? We want to be the center of the universe. And no matter what type of hybrid environment, on-prem, other cloud vendors, it really doesn't matter. We're going to be the center of the universe for you.
Yeah, this article is kind of the precursor to what we're doing next week in studio, because I've been hearing from CISOs that this is exactly what they're looking at. They're looking at their existing E3 and E5 contracts. What things do they not need to invest in as an add-on product that they can get out of their E3 or E5 license? That's how they're doing some of their zero budget balancing stuff. I've even had some CISOs tell me, look, all I need is Microsoft E5 and Zscaler, and I pretty much can cover the majority of my security program. Like, in Joe Gallo, who's quoted in here, Paul and I do a lot of Jeffrey's advisory work, right? So Paul and I have been on these calls. We've had these conversations with some of these analysts. Like, his quote in there is right on to some of the stuff that Paul and I have been telling him over the past couple of years. Like, that's all you need. Like a Microsoft E5 and a Zscaler is almost all you need in a lot of cases.
Watch out for when Microsoft brings in some zero trust connectivity.
Yeah.
ZTA for them is going to be a dangerous game.
It would. But you look at the other companies mentioned in this article that are in the crosshairs of a Microsoft solution right now. And there's a number of public companies that have to continue to show growth that definitely could see some growth slowdown as Microsoft continues the strategy. It's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant strategy, by the way, what they've done. All right. Ego is the enemy of good leadership. This was a great read. This was the story they start out with, Jason, I just thought was so interesting, right? And how it plays into your leadership style and your leadership capabilities. This was a really good read.
Yeah, was it? You're talking about the Carlsberg?
Yeah.
Story. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I mean, it's awesome. You know, it's a scenario where you have a brand new CEO running Carlsberg, which is, you know, the brewery, right? The major brewery in the world. Comes in, gets that nice corner office on the private 20th floor, you know, with key card access that only a handful of people can get up there and have conversations with them. Best view in the world, you know, from an office perspective. Spends 2 months there and says, "Oh my God, I'm so disconnected. I have to move out of here." Goes to an open office area on a lower floor so he can be around the employees, right? And you know, basically the explanation was, if I don't meet people, I won't get to know what they think. And if I don't have my finger on the pulse of the organization, how can I lead this organization?
Right.
It's genius, right? And it plays right into that, and it goes great with this article. It's the opposite of ego. It's servant leadership. Once you get into these roles, you're there to serve the organization and its people. That's why you're in this position. It's not about power, right? It's not about manipulation, right? It's not about
your private 20th floor office.
It's not. You got into this role because you're able to lead people, because you're able to build relationships and build consensus and build strategy. It's that servant leadership. That's the pinnacle. That's the top.
Yeah.
It was a good article. Like, they even covered some of the psychology that I was familiar with on a couple books I just read. And the hubris syndrome is a real thing, and you see it more and more. You start to see it and the toxicity that it brings. Like, this is a great example of what that can do if you don't keep it in check. So I thought this was a wonderful one.
Yeah.
It was.
It ties a little bit into this next article. Men speak more abstractly than women. Just the title of this one, I was like, wait a minute. Yeah, that's probably true. And then it gives you examples like concrete versus abstract language in this Harvard Business Review article. I'm like, oh yeah, that's definitely me.
You know, I think coming out of this article, you know, and it kind of says it's not the condemnation of concrete or abstract. It's really knowing both styles and when and where to use it. It's about the balance, right?
Exactly.
It's about knowing the audience and using both of those techniques as you see fit based on the audience you're presenting to, right? So it's balance. Both are great in the right place at the right time.
Yeah,
Power and compassion at the same time.
Yes. Well, and what you're thinking about is, you know, they talk about how abstract language is used to more kind of share a vision or a strategy, right? But you also have to balance that with specifics, with concrete capabilities that have to be built into products to actually deliver on that strategy, right? And so it's this really interesting yin and yang from a product perspective, right? I run the product team at Living Security. I kind of work with the CEO to drive the strategy. I talk probably a lot more abstractly than my product managers, who actually have to take this stuff and put it into concrete terms in order to deliver it to the engineering team to get built. And I was just sitting there looking at the examples going, yeah, that's probably why I'm not writing the epics.
But that's a perfect example, right? Of why you have product managers and why you have business analysts, right? You know, you have the folks in the business who are leaders who are trying to articulate the vision, right? That's why you build those stories. That's why you build those epics, right? And you have those sprints based on user stories. Well, at the end of the day, it's that, that product manager or program manager or business analyst that translates that back.
Yeah.
And really narrows that down to the specifics.
And
Now, if
puts
we
it
could
in,
just get marketing to translate that back again in proper language, what the vision was and what the product actually does, then we're in good shape.
Right. Yeah, that's an interesting conversation we're going to have later this week when I go to Austin, is tying the closing that loop off. Because you bring up a very good point, Tyler, right? Is I've always worked very closely, because I've been on the marketing side and on the product side, right? And when you think about the yin and the yang of that, it's aligning messaging, right? But it's still at an abstract level. But sometimes you need the concrete language in the marketing side so people know exactly what you do, instead of just all the fluffy little language around what you think you do. Anyways, yeah, it's a good comparison too. Yep, you can do that. Last article for today: how to explain things better. We've covered a number of Science of the People articles. They've been publishing a lot more lately. During the pandemic, I think there were some shifts over there, and they always bring in these really great communication articles. And we interviewed Vanessa Van Edwards on this. Paul and I did a couple years ago, and I've always continued to track them. What I love about this article is this is exactly kind of my playbook when I do my presentations, specifically my keynotes. And when I was doing my keynotes over in Singapore and Abu Dhabi as part of the RSA speaking tour when I was at Tenable, this is actually kind of the thought process I would go through. And I think it's 16 steps. You can consolidate some of this stuff down. But if you want to figure out how to take a 10 to 15 minute presentation and maximize the understanding of it, this is a great way to approach it. It starts with the why. It always starts with the why, right? It's the Simon Sinek, the why, the golden circle discussion, right? You start there, and then investing the time in the research. And then what was really interesting is before you explain, create a mental image, to the point where the imagery was part of my presentation to tie the story together, right? Yep. So when you just those first three pieces are really important kind of prep. Understand the why, do the research, and then build that mental image, because that image actually can flow through as part of your explanation, because a picture speaks 1,000 words. Like, so powerful when you think about pulling all that together.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, one of the pieces I pulled out of there that I want to make sure that I focus on a little bit more, was a couple of things. Number one, putting the most relevant information at the beginning and the end, and it kind of ties to the repetition piece, right? Mm-hmm. Make sure you're covering it out of the gate so they understand, and then make sure you're reinforcing it at the end.
Yes.
Right. So that's definitely something I took out of this article. And in repetition, that's part of the repetition part of it, right? So yeah, repetition allows people to remember when they hear it a certain amount of times. It's gonna stick in their memory.
And you got to remember, you only have about 30 seconds to capture their attention. Mm-hmm. So if you don't get to that core message first, they're not going to listen to the rest. They're gone for the rest of the time, right? You got that first 30 seconds to get their attention. They pay attention, and then you reinforce it at the end. But if you don't do that effectively at the beginning, the whole middle's gone. Like they just tune out. It's game over. They'll never get your message that you're trying to communicate. And so these tips and tricks are very important. I've used them for all of my prep work, and I think they're a great set of skills for people to work on.
Yeah, one of the other ones I love too is ask questions during the conversation. Mm-hmm. Right, a lot of folks forget to ask questions. They constantly deliver. But when you ask questions, it makes people think, and when they're thinking about it and pondering things, it's going to make them remember. Yeah. Right, so asking questions throughout the duration of the conversation, I think, is important too.
Especially in longer presentations and sessions, right? Mm-hmm. Getting that kind of two-way communication flowing back and forth is good. It's also good for engagement and to make sure that they're still tuned in to what you're talking about. Yeah. Yeah, they do some great articles. Tyler, any thoughts on this one?
No, I was just digesting all this. I actually am walking through a presentation mastermind class right now, and all of this is very, very relevant, very close to the stuff they're teaching. It is very difficult to convey very technical messages to broad audiences and get the points across well. So in our field especially, this is something that can go a long ways if you're talking to a board, if you're trying to get budget, if you're trying to get buy-in, champion different divisions within inside of the company. All of those things are very relevant and rely on your ability to effectively communicate that, and oftentimes that's in a presentation form. So really good information here, and you pay a lot of money in other places for this exact same information, so you should definitely read this article.
Yes. Yes. It's also good if you ever want to host or co-host a podcast. Just saying, like some preparation stuff.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, thank you. I look forward to seeing you in studio next week. We are going to record live the show next week. We're going to be in studio. It's going to be awesome. Thank you, everyone, for watching and listening. We'll see you next week on Business Security Weekly.